Hey guys, Nick here with VanCan, and as you can see around me, we have been hit by winter, so I'm not doing too much riding. And I have another story about why I'm not doing too much riding coming up, probably after this one, next week. But today I just wanted to talk to you about bike shops and how I almost stopped supporting them and just going to them in general. There's sort of three examples that I have that all happened when I moved to Vancouver, and yeah, it was just a really strange time. So let's talk about it. Alright, so before I actually moved to Vancouver, I worked at a bike shop for 8 summers while I was going to high school and university and all that stuff. So I kind of got a good idea for the business, how you repair bikes, how you sell bikes, how you run a business, and how you interact with people and deal with warranties and all that kind of stuff. So luckily, I had all this knowledge coming in, and you'll see why that's important later on. Now, when I moved to Vancouver, I was only a BMXer at the time. I bought an Norco Range, and my first mountain bike came here, and really enjoyed it, did lots of riding, and that was great. After a while of riding in Vancouver, with my Norco Range, doing all this mountain biking, I eventually needed repairs to be done. And I didn't have any tools, I didn't bring anything with me. We lived in a really small place, I had lots of roommates. I didn't have the room, so I thought, you know what, I'll bring my bike to a shop. Not something I usually do, but I figured there's enough work to be done, and I just didn't want to, stress about all the little things that, buying the tools, getting the space, all that stuff. Didn't want to deal with it. So I went to this shop, and I got them to repair my bike. The thing was, I went in kind of with the expectations I had from the shop that I worked at. And I got them to do quite a bit of work. I think, relace a wheel, do hub bearings, switch out brake pads, all sorts of stuff. Change a flat. At the time I was running tubes still. And when I got my bill, it was huge. I think they charged like $80 or $100 an hour, and it was pretty crazy. But I figured, what, it's Vancouver, everything's expensive. What are you gonna do? That's just the way it is. So I thought, fine. But the thing was, when I got my bike back, even though I felt like I paid a really premium price, I didn't feel like my bike was repaired in a premium way. The hub was still loose, things weren't really put together right. I got them to take a token out, and they didn't fill my fork back up. And like I said, I didn't have any tools. I had to go back to the shop again. I couldn't go riding and get all this little stuff tightened up here and there. And this was one of the first times where I thought, you know what, I'm gonna start just buying tools myself, because driving back and forth is really annoying. So this first experience with this shop wasn't terrible, but my problem with it was, like I said, I paid a lot of money, and I feel like I didn't get, I paid a premium price and I didn't get premium service. It was just a bit off-putting. For spokes and stuff like that, I paid $3 a spoke to get my wheel relaced. I paid $100 just in spokes, and I thought that was crazy. And they did little things like I said, I needed a flat changed. They relaced the rim, right? They had to take everything off the bike, take the tire off, take the tube out. I gave them a tube that I had because I had a flat. I said, hey, when you're relacing the rim, can you put in the good tube instead of the old bad tube? And that'll fix my flat. Well, even though they're doing all the sort of same steps to relace my rim, they still charge me the full price for changing a flat. There's other two separate things. And this was just a bit off-putting, because when I would do work like that, I would charge people sort of for the work that I feel like I did. If there was a lot of overlapping things, like putting the bike up in the stand, taking off the wheel, taking off the tire, I wouldn't charge them separately for each little thing. I would sort of bundle it together. And well, they didn't do this. And again, this isn't a terrible experience. They didn't do anything wrong. It just is a bit off-putting. And so that was sort of my first experience. I just paid a lot of money, and I feel like I didn't get the value that I was expecting. Just a bit odd. Now, a few months go by, and well, I have my Norco Range, and unfortunately it cracked in the chainstay. Now, Norco is here, luckily, but the shop I bought it from was back from Ontario, where I'm from. And well, I couldn't go back to the shop. I mean, I could, but who's gonna pay all that money to go all the way to Ontario, then all the way back here? Crazy. So I got my friend to call the rep, ask if they could send it right to my house, the replacement part, and they said, no, you have to go to a Norco authorized dealer. I said, okay, fine. I took everything apart. I've got the chainstay all ready to go. and I go find a Norco dealer. So I've got my broken chainstay off, I've got the RA number, I've got everything ready to go. Now when I go to the Norco dealer, all they need to do is act as a shipping address. And I'm kind of being forced to do this by Norco, which is fine, but you know, just kind of annoying. I go to a Norco dealer and they say, oh yeah, totally, we can deal with this warranty. And I'm expecting to pay for shipping or, you know, maybe whatever it is they have to do, you know, to send a package. I'm assuming not very much. You know, I was expecting to pay $15, $20. Norco is local, it's down the street. But, you know, whatever, I was kind of expecting to pay that. But then they also said, by the way, there's a $100 warranty fee because you didn't buy the bike here. And now, luckily for me, like I said, I worked at a shop. I know that's nonsense, and I was like, what the heck? No, you can't just do that. So luckily I could call the rep. Well, I called my friend who called the rep, and he told them the story. Like, hey, your Norco dealer, your local Norco dealer, is charging people $100 to process warranties. What's going on there? And, you know, the rep called the shop, and I don't know what he said, but magically I didn't need to pay this mysterious $100 warranty fee or pay for shipping or anything like that. So that was my second experience with a shop. And as far as I can tell, they tried to kind of scam me out of $100, which was like, it was so weird because we're mountain bikers, we're supposed to be a big group together, we're supposed to love shops and stuff like that. But man, what was that? So weird. Again, really off-put. But what are you gonna do? I got my chainstay, got my bike back together, it's good to go. I could go riding and just forget about all this stuff. So a few more months go by and, well, I start to have problems with my bike again. My rear wheel is acting up, it's kind of loose, I probably need new bearings, but I've been able to kind of tighten it up and make it last a little longer. And I've got everything apart and I see that I need a cone wrench that I don't have. I go back to the first shop, the one that charged me a lot of money, especially for the work that they did. And I say, hey, do you have a cone wrench that I can buy? They say no, but we can put one on order. I say, yes, great, do that. And I say, well, I have my wheel here right now, and it just, you know, everything's apart. I literally just need a cone wrench to be put on the hub and, you know, give it a quarter turn. Can I borrow a cone wrench for, you know, 30 seconds? And they say, no, we don't loan out tools, which is fine. I get that. We've loaned out tools at the shop I worked at, and they've been ruined. It's really annoying in a place like Vancouver. I can imagine people would just be always borrowing your tools. You know, fair enough. Totally legitimate thing to say. But I say, okay, well, you know, can one of your shop guys just give this thing a quarter turn and I can be on my way and go riding? And he says, yeah, for sure. And what he does is he looks down at his little chart and he sees that, hub adjust, you know, there's the service fee. And he says, yeah, that'll be $35. And he just couldn't, I had the bike all apart. I'm not exaggerating that the literal amount of work was maybe 30 seconds. Literally, I was asking them to turn a nut, just tighten the hub nut. That was it. And he saw, yes, you know what, to adjust a hub, we charge $35. And he was 100% serious. I said, you know what, cancel my cone wrench order. No, I'm not paying $35 for you to turn this, you know, for 30 seconds. And I left, and I actually never went back. I was just so annoyed by that shop. I was like, I just can't come back here. It just is too much. And so there I was, still loose hub. And I was like, man, what do I do? I still have this loose hub. So I went to another shop. I went to Kinetic Cycles, actually. And, well, I went in and I said, hey, do you guys have a cone wrench? They said, no. We can order one, you know, same thing. Okay, I put one on the order. And then before I could say anything else, I was like, oh yeah, I've got my wheel. They said, hey, do you want to borrow a cone wrench? And I said, yeah, I would love to borrow a cone wrench. They let me borrow one. I tightened up my hub and I was on my way. I didn't even need to ask. They just knew, like, hey, here's this guy and he's stuck in a spot. We can help him out in a really easy way. And they did, and that was great. And I've gone back to Kinetic Cycles a lot. I really like the guys. They're always really nice. I feel like they're trying to help me, and they're not just trying to gouge me for every single little thing. And that's why when I go buy anything that I need tools, I need pedals. I even get them to work on my bike now because I trust them. I don't think that they're just trying to get money out of me. So, well, I let them do all sorts of stuff for me and I pay them for it because I really like what they do. It's worth it to me and everyone is happy. So, you know, that's how I almost stopped going to shops. But actually Kinetic Cycles, you know, shout out to them. They're the ones who brought me back. And since then I've actually had more good experiences. Like, you know, I went to Dunbar. My boy Leon, you know, showed me around the shop, took the time to film a video. That was great. They were super nice. All the guys there were great. You know, they let me look at all the bikes, try them out, all sorts of stuff like that. And I've also had a really good experience with Steed Cycles up in North Vancouver. And it's weird. It's almost like once I found one good shop, it's like they all kind of appeared out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, don't worry, we're still here. We still have, you know, there's still good shops out there. And that's it. That's my story about how I almost stopped going to shops. It was this close. I was just gonna, you know, order every tool online from then on, deal with YT forever and Commensal and all these other direct-to-consumer brands, and just say, you know what? I just don't need shops. I'm my own shop. And, well, I'm just never gonna go to them. And that's all changed. I would definitely go, you know, I go to Kinetic Cycles all the time. The guys at Dunbar are great. The guys at Steed Cycles are great. And, you know, I hope this story just is, well, a message to people who work, not just at bike shops, but in sort of any industry where you deal with people. It's the little things that make up the most. Anyone can sell a bike. It's really easy to have a good product and sell it. Like the Enduro I bought, it's easy to sell. It sells itself. But where shops and other businesses and stuff, like where you really step up ahead as a great business, in my opinion, it's the little things, it's the weird scenarios where you're like, you know, do I stay the extra 5 minutes to help this person? Do I charge them for this little bowl? Do I do all these little things? And when you're willing to just help someone a little bit, like Kinetic Cycles helped me, that matters a lot. And for them, you know, letting me borrow that tool, saving the $35 that they could have charged me, has paid off 100, 200, 500 fold by now, and more so in the future. It just is, it's so obvious to me, and it's so strange when I go into a place and we have a good relationship and they treat you kind of poorly. You know, they do something strange where they're just trying to gouge you for that last little penny. And I don't get it. But thankfully, you know what, there's still good people out there. I think most people are actually good, and I just had a run of bad luck, and hopefully that just never happens again, but you know, that's not true. But there's good shops out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed that story. Hopefully, you know, I get more riding in soon. Thanks for watching. And, well, next week's video is going to be pretty interesting. More talk about kind of shops and stuff. So I'll see you guys then. See you later.